Leo wasn't like the other kids in his neighborhood while they were busy chasing baseballs and trading comic books. Leo's world revolved around a different kind of hero. Elvis Presley. From the moment he'd first heard Heartbreak Hotel on his father's old transistor radio, something inside him had clicked. It wasn't just the music, it was the voice, the swagger, the way Elvis seemed to pour his whole soul into every note. For Leo, Elvis was more than a singer. He was a phenomenon, a force of nature. Leo lived in a small, cramped apartment with his mom and two younger sisters. His dad had passed away a few years ago, leaving them with not much more than memories and a mountain of bills. Every dollar counted. Leo worked odd jobs after school, delivering newspapers, sweeping up at the local barbershop, anything to help his mom make ends meet. He was only 16, but he carried the weight of someone much older. One sweltering summer afternoon, as Leo wiped down the dusty shelves at Mr. Henderson's general store, a poster taped to the front window caught his eye. It was bright red and blue with a familiar iconic silhouette. Elvis Presley, Grand Arena. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs like a drum solo. Elvis in their city. It felt too good to be true. He stared at the dates, the times, his mind racing. This was it. This was his chance. He watched his mom carefully rationing the meatloaf, her face tired but determined. He knew asking for money for a concert ticket was almost unthinkable, but he couldn't help himself. "Mom," he started, his voice a little shaky. "Elvis Presley is coming to town." His mom paused, a fork halfway to her mouth. She knew about Leo's obsession. She'd often tease him, calling him Little Elvis, when he'd belt out tunes in the shower. "Oh, honey, that's exciting," she said, but her eyes held a hint of worry. "I really, really want to go," he pressed, then quickly added, "I could pay for it myself. I'll work extra hours, I promise." His mom sighed, a soft sound of resignation. "Leo, you work so hard already, and tickets for someone like Elvis, they must be expensive." He knew she was right, but a spark had ignited inside him. He spent the next few days in a blur, calculating every penny. He picked up more shifts, ran errands for neighbors, even polished cars for a few dimes. He scrimped and saved every cent. He wanted the best seat, a seat close enough to see the sweat on Elvis's brow, to feel the vibrations of his guitar. He imagined himself front row, maybe even catching Elvis's eye. When he finally went to the box office, his palms were sweating, the lines snaked around the block. When it was his turn, he practically whispered, "One ticket, please. As close as I can get." The ticket agent, a bored-looking woman with a towering beehive hairdo, typed something into her machine. She glanced at him, then back at the screen. "Best seats are long gone, kid. Only nosebleeds left way up in the rafters. $55. $55. It was nearly everything he had. All his hard-earned money for a seat so far away. He'd probably need binoculars to even make out Elvis's figure. His shoulders slumped. His dream of being up close, of feeling truly connected, vanished like smoke. "I'll take it," he said, his voice flat. He handed over the crumpled bills, watching as the woman counted them slowly, her fingers stained with ink. She slid a small, flimsy ticket across the counter. "Section 312, Row C, Seat 12, Rafters." The very top. He walked out of the arena, feeling a mix of triumph and disappointment. He had a ticket. He was going to see Elvis, but it wasn't the experience he dreamed of. He felt a pang of sadness thinking about how far he'd be practically in the clouds. He imagined the roar of the crowd below, and himself a tiny speck looking down on the spectacle. Still, it was Elvis. And for Leo, even a distant glimpse of the king was better than no glimpse at all. Clutched the ticket tightly. The paper a flimsy barrier between his humble reality and the dazzling dream he was about to witness. The anticipation, despite the poor seat, still buzzed beneath his skin, a faint but persistent hum of excitement. The night of the concert arrived wrapped in a humid summer haze. The air crackled with a unique energy, a mix of anticipation, and the distant hum of thousands of excited fans. Leo had spent the entire day feeling like he was walking on air and quicksand at the same time. He wore his best and only clean shirt, a faded denim button-up that suddenly felt too casual for such a grand occasion. He arrived at the grand arena early, wanting to soak in every moment. The sheer size of the building was overwhelming. People swarmed like ants around a spilled soda, all heading towards the glittering entrance. Limousines pulled up, disgorging women in sparkling dresses and men in sharp suits. Leo felt a little out of place, clutching his single humble ticket. He followed the flow of the crowd up escalators, through long echoing corridors, and finally up a winding ramp that seemed to go on forever. His section, 312, was practically in the stratosphere. When he found his seat, row Z's seat 12, he had to crane his neck to see the stage. It was a tiny rectangle far below, adorned with spotlights that looked like tiny pinpricks of light. The people on the main floor were indistinguishable blobs. A wave of disappointment washed over him again. He had known it would be bad, but this was worse than he'd imagined. He could barely tell if the stage was empty or if a whole orchestra was setting up. He sighed, sinking into the hard plastic seat. Pulled out the small worn photo of Elvis he kept in his wallet. A publicity shot from his early days, all slicked back hair and a mischievous smirk. He held it up, imagining how different it would be if he were down there close enough to see that smile in person. Slowly the arena filled. The chatter grew to a roar, a collective buzz of excitement that vibrated through the floor. The lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd, thick with anticipation. Then a spotlight hit the stage, and a voice, deep and resonant, announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley." The arena exploded. A deafening roar, a wave of screams and applause washed over Leo. He instinctively stood up, craning his neck, searching for the iconic figure. And then he saw him. Even from this dizzying height, Elvis was unmistakable. A flash of white, a powerful stand to earth. Leo felt tears sting his eyes. He couldn't make out his face clearly, couldn't see the details of his famous jumpsuits, but he could feel him. The music started a powerful driving rhythm that reverberated through the very structure of the building. Elvis's voice filled the arena rich and clear, effortlessly reaching even the highest seats. He sang, "Hound Dog," and the energy was electric. Leo, forgetting his disappointment, started swaying, tapping his foot. He sang along to every word, his own voice lost in the thunderous chorus of thousands. Elvis moved with an almost supernatural grace, a swirl of energy on the stage. He moved his hips. He strummed his guitar. He threw back his head and belted out notes that seemed to come from the very core of his being. During "Can't Help Falling in Love," the tempos slowed, and a different kind of magic filled the air. Elvis stood still, bathed in a single spotlight, his voice tender and heartfelt. He looked out into the vast sea of faces, and for a fleeting moment Leo imagined Elvis's gaze sweeping across the top tier, perhaps even briefly resting on his section. Of course, it was just his imagination. Elvis couldn't possibly see him, a tiny dot among thousands, but the thought, however improbable, warmed him. He felt a connection, as if Elvis was singing directly to him, sharing this intimate moment with every single person in the room. Concert was a blur of incredible music, dazzling lights, and raw emotion. Elvis moved from powerful rock anthems to soulful ballads, each song a masterpiece. Leo lost himself in the performance, his bad seat forgotten. He was just part of the moment, breathing the same air as his hero, feeling the same rhythm pulse through his veins. As the concert neared its end, Elvis began his final bows, throwing scarves into the outstretched hands of fans near the stage. The roar of the crowd was overwhelming, a testament to the king's power. Leo felt a pang of sadness that it was almost over, but also immense gratitude. He had seen Elvis. He had been there. Even from the cheap seats, it had been an experience he would never forget. He watched as Elvis waved one last time, then disappeared into the wings. leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than any sound. The lights flickered on, harsh and bright, jarring Leo from the concert's spell. The crowd began to stir, a slow, rustling tide of people heading for the exits. Leo felt a familiar pang of reluctance. He didn't want the night to end. He wanted to hold on to that feeling, that electric buzz, just a little longer. Instead of joining the stream of people heading for the main doors, Leo decided to take a different route. He felt an inexplicable pull, a need to linger. He figured he could explore a bit, maybe find a different exit, anything to prolong the magic. He wandered down a less crowded corridor away from the main concourses. The air here was cooler, less thick with the scent of popcorn and perfume. The walls were plain utilitarian, a stark contrast to the grand velvet-roped areas he passed earlier. He found himself walking past doors marked "Staff Only" and "Authorized Personnel." He knew he shouldn't be there, but curiosity, a powerful magnet, drew him forward. He wasn't trying to sneak in or cause trouble. He just wanted to feel closer to the heart of the arena, to the place where all the magic happened. He imagined Elvis just on the other side of one of these doors, maybe taking off his dazzling jumpsuit, winding down after the incredible performance. He heard the distant rumble of trucks outside, the faint shouts of roadies loading equipment. The corridor twisted, and he found himself in a quieter section, almost deserted. There was a faint hum of electricity and a smell of sweat and something metallic. Then he spotted it. A half-open door leading into what looked like a loading dock area. A sliver of light escaped from within. Normally, Leo would have walked past, minding his own business, but something compelled him to peek. He edged closer, his heart thumping. He could hear muffled voices, a low laugh. He leaned in just a fraction, trying to see what was inside, and then he saw him. It was Elvis. Not the glittering, larger-than-life figure from the stage, but a more human, slightly disheveled version. He was standing with a few people, probably his security detail or managers. He had taken off his jacket, and his hair was a little damp, plastered to his forehead. He was talking, gesturing with his hands, his face animated. He looked real, more real than Leo had ever imagined. Leo froze, barely breathing. He was so close, closer than he'd ever dared to dream. He could see the intricate embroidery on Elvis's shirt, the subtle way his lips moved when he spoke. He saw a small bead of sweat trickling down his temple. It was like seeing a painting come to life, not just on a canvas, but in 3 dimensions. He was so engrossed, so utterly mesmerized, that he didn't hear the footsteps approaching until it was too late. "Hey, kid, what are you doing here?" A gruff voice snapped. Leo jumped, startled, his head snapping up. A burly security guard with a stern face and arms like tree trunks was standing over him. He was a mountain of a man, easily twice Leo's size. I just got a little lost," Leo stammered, his face flushing red. "I was looking for the exit." The guard narrowed his eyes. "This is a restricted area. You need to turn around and go back the way you came. Right now." His tone left no room for argument. Leo's heart sank. He knew he was in trouble. Too far. He looked back towards the open door where Elvis was, a desperate last glance trying to imprint the image in his mind. He saw Elvis look up, alerted by the guard's raised voice. Their eyes met. It was only for a second, a fleeting moment across the dimly lit loading dock. Elvis's eyes, even from this distance, seemed to hold a curious warmth. He saw Leo, a startled kid with wide, innocent eyes looking out of place. He saw the genuine awe, the almost childlike wonder on Leo's face. The guard took a step forward, his hand reaching out to firmly guide Leo away. Leo knew this was it. He would be shuffled out, maybe even reprimanded. The dream was over. But just as the guard was about to take hold of his arm, something unexpected happened. Elvis, who had been observing the scene, said something to the people around him. He took a step forward, a slight frown on his face, but not an angry one. He seemed intrigued. His mind raced, trying to find another explanation. Maybe he was pointing at something behind him or past him, but there was nothing, only the stern-faced guard and a wall. The guard, who had been about to escort Leo away, paused, his hand still hovering. He looked from Elvis to Leo, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. Elvis then said something to one of his aides, a man in a smart suit standing beside him. The aide nodded, then looked towards the guard and Leo. The aide, a smooth-looking man with a clipboard, started walking towards them. He moved with an easy confidence, his eyes assessing Leo as he approached. Leo's heart, which had just started to slow down after the initial shock of being caught, now hammered against his ribs like a frantic bird. This couldn't be happening. "Excuse me, young man," the aide said, his voice calm, but with an underlying authority. "Mr. Presley would like a word with you." Leo felt as if all the air had been sucked out of his lungs. He stared at the aide, then back at Elvis, who was still observing them. A small, unreadable smile playing on his lips. "Me," Leo croaked, his voice barely a whisper. He wants to talk to me." The guard, still looking confused, stepped back, releasing his posture of ready dismissal. The aide simply nodded. "Yes, you, please come with me." Leo felt a surge of adrenaline so potent it made his limbs tingle. Was this a trick? Was he in more trouble than he thought? Maybe Elvis wanted to scold him for being in a restricted area. There was no anger in the aide's voice, only a quiet instruction. And Elvis hadn't looked angry, he had looked curious. Took a shaky step forward, then another following the aide. His mind was a whirlwind of disbelief and pure unadulterated excitement. He was going pagged. He was going to meet Elvis Presley himself. The man he'd idolized, whose records he'd worn thin, whose posters adorned his bedroom wall, was asking for him. As he walked past the security guard, the man gave him a bewildered shrug, as if to say, "Don't ask me, kid." Leo could feel his legs trembling. He felt a bead of sweat trickle down his spine, not from heat, but from sheer nerves. The aide led him through the half-open door and into the loading dock area. The air was different here, cooler, smelling faintly of sweat, stale cigarette smoke, and something else, a faint, sweet cologne. It was the scent of the man himself, of Elvis. Elvis was standing a few feet away, surrounded by a small group of people. He was no longer the distant star on stage, but a living, breathing human being. His hair a little mussed, framed a face that was both famous and incredibly kind. His eyes, blue and deep, met Leo's. There was no judgment in them, only a gentle curiosity. "Well now," Elvis said, his voice a low rumble, richer and more powerful than any recording could capture. "What's your name, son?" Leo opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His throat felt dry, constricted. "Leo. Sir." "Leo Miller." Elvis smiled, a genuine warm smile that lit up his face. It was the smile from all the album covers, but somehow even more captivating in person. "Leo Miller," he repeated, his gaze softening. "You looked a little lost back there, Leo. What were you doing, wandering around backstage?" Leo's face burned. He swallowed hard. I just wanted to see if I could get a closer look, Mr. Presley. I had a really bad seat, way up in the rafters. I didn't want the night to end." He blurted out the truth, the raw, honest truth of his adoration and disappointment. Elvis listened, his head tilted slightly, his expression thoughtful. He didn't interrupt, didn't judge, he just listened. The other people in the room were silent, their eyes flicking between the legendary singer and the star-struck teenager. After a moment, Elvis nodded slowly. "Rafters, huh? That's a long way from the stage." He paused. Then his smile widened. "Well, Leo, consider this your upgrade. Come on in, don't just stand there." He gestured with a graceful sweep of his hand towards a nearby door. "Let's find somewhere a little more comfortable to talk." Leo felt a surge of warmth flood through him, melting away his fear and replacing it with pure, unadulterated joy. This wasn't a dream. It was real. Elvis Presley, the king, was possible. He took a hesitant step forward, crossing the threshold into a world he had only ever dreamed of. Leo followed Elvis and his aide, his legs still feeling like jelly. Every step he took felt real. He was walking backstage at an Elvis Presley concert. The air was thick with the lingering scent of performance, a mix of sweat, stage makeup, and a faint sweet smell of Elvis's cologne. It was a stark contrast to the roaring energy of the arena. Here it was quieter, more hushed, filled with a different kind of energy. Purpose. They walked down another corridor less utilitarian than the last. This one was carpeted, the walls adorned with framed posters from past tours and black and white photographs of Elvis in various iconic poses. Crew members bustled by, pushing carts loaded with equipment, coils of cable and costume rack. They glanced at Leo, a curious look in their eyes, but didn't stop. He was clearly an unexpected guest. He saw guitar cases stacked against a wall, drum kits partly disassembled, and a technician meticulously coiling a microphone cable. It was like seeing the inner workings of a massive, well-oiled machine, the gears behind the dazzling spectacle. This was the engine room, the true heart of the show. A place hidden from the eyes of the millions of fans who only saw the polished, perfect performance. Elvis walked with an easy confidence, his presence commanding even when off stage. He exchanged quick greetings with crew members, a nod here, a quiet word there, showing respect to everyone around him. Leo noticed how all eyes, even those of the busy crew, seemed to gravitate towards him. A testament to his charisma, yet Elvis didn't act like he was above them. He was just Elvis. The aide opened a door, revealing a more private area. It wasn't a dressing room, but more of a small, comfortable lounge. There were plush sofas, a coffee table laden with bottles of water and soft drinks, and a few scattered magazines. The lighting was soft, making the space feel calm and welcoming. Leo noticed a guitar leaning against a chair in the corner, a beautiful custom-made instrument gleaming under the soft light. Elvis gestured towards a sofa. "Have a seat, Leo. Make yourself comfortable." Leo hesitated, then slowly sank onto the edge of the plush cushion. It felt incredibly soft, luxurious, a far cry from the hard plastic seats he was used to. He watched, mesmerized, as Elvis walked over to a cooler, grabbed 2 bottles of soda, and handed one to him. "Thanks," Leo mumbled, his voice still a bit shaky. Clutched the cold bottle, feeling its condensation on his palm. Elvis took a seat opposite him, leaning back, stretching his long legs. He looked tired, but his eyes were still bright, full of an almost youthful energy. Close, his famous sideburns seemed even darker, his eyelashes surprisingly long. He was even more handsome than in the movies or on TV. He was larger than life, yet surprisingly approachable. "So, Leo," Elvis began, his voice calm and friendly, "you said you had a bad seat. How bad was it?" Leo managed a small, nervous laugh. "Section 312. Rosie, top row." "It was like watching ants from a plane, Mr. Presley." Elvis chuckled. "A rich, genuine sound. Ants, huh? Well, I hope the ants were still singing their hearts out," Leo grinned, feeling a tiny bit more at ease. "Oh, they were, sir. I mean, I was. It was still amazing, just distant." "I understand," Elvis said, his voice thoughtful, "but it's a shame when someone has to be that far away." Theo felt a surge of warmth. Elvis understood. He wasn't just saying it to be polite. He genuinely seemed to care. The awkwardness of the situation began to lessen, replaced by a growing sense of wonder and disbelief. He was sitting here drinking a soda with Elvis Presley. It was the most incredible thing that had ever happened to him. He still couldn't quite believe it was real. The air in the quiet lounge was filled with a comfortable silence for a moment, only broken by the soft hum of the building's ventilation system. Leo took a sip of his soda, the cold fizz a welcome sensation in his dry mouth. He stole another glance at Elvis, trying to etch every detail of this unbelievable moment into his memory. Elvis was leaning back, relaxed, but with an intensity in his gaze that was always present. His famous white jumpsuit, now unzipped slightly at the chest, seemed less like a costume and more like a second skin reflecting the light in subtle ways. "So, Leo," Elvis began again, his voice warm and unhurried. "Tell me a little about yourself. What brings a young man like you to an Elvis concert all the way up in the nosebleeds?" He gestured with a playful flick of his wrist. Leo felt his cheeks flush, but he took a deep breath. This was his chance to talk to Elvis, to tell him what his music meant. "Your music, it just always made me feel better, like everything was going to be okay." He looked down at his hands, suddenly feeling vulnerable. "It's hard to explain, but when I hear your voice, it's like nothing else matters. All the worries, they just disappear. Even if it's just for a few minutes." Elvis listened intently, his expression serious now. He didn't interrupt, just let Leo speak, his gaze steady and understanding. When Leo finished, there was a quiet moment before Elvis spoke. "I appreciate you saying that, Leo," Elvis said softly, his voice lower than before. "That means a lot to me, more than you know." He leaned forward slightly. "You know, when I started out, I was just a kid from Tupelo, Mississippi. Didn't have a dime to my name. My family, we were poor. We knew what it was like to struggle to scrape by." He paused, a faraway look in his eyes as if remembering those early days. "I worked hard, did what I could, and when I finally got a chance to sing, to share my music, I just wanted to give people something to make them forget their troubles, even for a little while, something to lift their spirits." He looked back at Leo, his gaze sincere. "So when you say my music helps you, that's exactly what I hope for. That's why I do this." Leo felt a profound connection in that moment. It wasn't just Elvis Presley, the unreachable star, talking. It was a man who understood hardship, who valued connection, who genuinely cared about the people who listened to his songs. He wasn't a god. He was just a man with a gift and a kind heart. "I saved up every penny I had for that ticket," Leo confessed, "working extra jobs. I knew I wouldn't get a good seat, but I just had to be here." "Had to see you, Leo," he said, and Leo's heart skipped a beat. "When the guard caught you back there, you looked well. You looked like a kid who just wanted a little closer look, and there was something in your eyes, a real passion for the music. I recognized it." He smiled gently. "I used to be that kid, you know, standing outside just hoping for a glimpse of someone I admired." Leo couldn't believe it. Elvis had seen him. He had noticed him. Not just a random fan, but him. The thought was overwhelming, exhilarating. "Thank you, Mr. Presley," Leo managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything, for the music, for inviting me here. This is more than I ever dreamed of." Elvis waved a dispersed "See, son, call me Elvis," he chuckled. "And it's my pleasure. It's not often I get to meet someone who looks like they truly understand what the music means." He leaned forward, his eyes twinkling. "So what was your favorite song tonight? Besides, Hound Dog, of course. Everyone loves Hound Dog." Leo grinned, feeling a surge of genuine joy. He was talking to Elvis, cracking jokes with him about the music they both loved. This was more than just a meeting. It was a conversation, a connection, a moment of shared humanity with a legend. "My favorite song tonight, Elvis?" Leo pondered, a genuine smile, now comfortable on his face. The initial terror of speaking to his idol had melted away, replaced by an easy, natural flow. There were so many, it's hard to pick just one. "But when you sang Can't Help Falling in Love from Way Up High, I could still feel it. Every word. It felt like you were singing it just to me." Elvis nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "That's a special one, isn't it?" "It's one of those songs that just feels right every time. It's about that universal feeling, you know, that deep, honest connection." He leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. "Sometimes after a show and the adrenaline is still pumping, I come back here and I think about those moments when the song just connects with the audience. That's the real magic. Leo felt a surge of understanding. He had always thought of the magic as coming from Elvis's incredible talent, his voice, his movements, but Elvis was talking of something deeper, something shared between the performer and the audience. "Do you ever get tired of it, Elvis?" Leo asked, a daring question he hadn't intended to voice. All the shows, the crowds, the traveling. Elvis looked at him for a long moment, then sighed softly. "And that's what reminds me why I do it. That connection, Leo, that's everything." He gestured around the quiet room. "This isn't just about me up there singing songs. It's about what it means to people like you. When you told me my music helped you through a tough time, that's the greatest reward for me. More than any record sale, any sold-out show." Elvis wasn't just a performer. He was a human being with a deep understanding of his impact on others. He cared genuinely. "What do you do, Leo, when you're not saving up for concert tickets?" Elvis asked, his tone shifting slightly, showing a personal interest. "I help my mom," Leo replied. "She works real hard. I deliver papers, do odd jobs after school, trying to save up for college maybe, or just to help out." Elvis nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on his face. "That's a good boy, Leo. Family's important. Always remember that there ain't nothing more important than family." He paused, then picked up a guitar pick from the coffee table, idly turning it between his fingers. It was a simple black pick with his signature, T-Sue-B. Lightning bolt, logo. "You know, when I started out, I just loved music," Elvis continued almost to himself. "I never dreamed it would turn into all this. The jumpsuits, the big arenas. I just wanted to sing and people listened. It's a blessing, but it's also a responsibility to give back, to connect." He looked at Leo again, his gaze piercing. The compliment made Leo's chest swell. To be told that by Elvis Presley was something he would cherish forever. It wasn't about the fame or the money or the glitz. It was about shared humanity. "Come on, I want to show you something." Leo, surprised, followed him. Elvis walked over to the guitar he had noticed earlier, the beautiful custom-made one. He picked it up, cradling it gently. He strummed a few chords, a soft, melodic sound filling the room. It was effortless, perfect. "This here," Elvis said, running his hand. "More than just an instrument. It's seen a lot of stages, heard a lot of screams, and it's helped me tell a lot of stories." He looked at Leo, a hint of playfulness in his eyes. "You ever play?" Leo shook his head. "No, sir." "Never too late to learn," Elvis said, then strummed a final resonant chord that hung in the air. He put the guitar back carefully. The simple conversation, the genuine interest Elvis had shown, had touched Leo deeply. It wasn't a quick handshake or a hurried autograph. It was a real, honest human connection with someone he had only ever seen on posters and screens. It made Elvis feel less like a distant idol and more like a generous, compassionate man. And that, in itself, was the greatest gift. Elvis set the guitar back in its stand, and the soft melody faded from the air, leaving a lingering warmth in the quiet lounge. He turned back to Leo, a smile on his face. "Well, Leo," he said, "I've got another show to get ready for tomorrow night. But I'm glad we had this little chat. It's good to meet a real fan, someone who understands what it's all about." Leo felt a pang of disappointment that their time was drawing to a close, but also overwhelming gratitude. He had sat and talked with Elvis Presley. "Thank you, Elvis," he said, his voice heartfelt. "Thank you so much. This has been incredible." Elvis walked over to a small table near the wall where a few framed photographs and some personal items were laid out. He picked up one of the photographs. It was an 8x10 glossy print of him on stage mid-song, microphone in hand, his head thrown back. He looked dynamic, powerful. He uncapped the pen on the table, a thick, expensive-looking pen, and with a flourish, he signed the photo. His signature, bold and distinctive, appeared across the bottom corner. To Leo, keep on rockin' Elvis Presley. He held it out to Leo. Here, something to remember the night by, and maybe next time you won't have to sit in the clouds. Leo took the photo with trembling hands. It was still slightly warm from Elvis's touch. The ink on the signature, it was proof. Proof that this hadn't been a dream. Proof that he had truly met Elvis and that Elvis had genuinely cared enough to spend time with him. The inscription, "Keep on rockin'," felt personal. A message just for him. "Thank you," Leo whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He stared at the photograph, then back up at Elvis, tears welling in his eyes. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me." Elvis chuckled softly. "Don't get too mushy on me, kid," he teased gently, but his eyes were kind. He then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small rectangular object. It was a guitar pick, the same kind he'd been toying with earlier with the gold TCB lightning bolt. "Here," he said, pressing it into Leo's palm. "For good measure, maybe it'll inspire you to pick up that guitar yourself someday." Leo clutched the pick in the photo, his heart overflowing. 2 personal items from Elvis himself, it was almost too much to take in. Just then, the aide from before discreetly appeared at the door. "Mr. Presley, your next appointment is ready." Elvis nodded. "All right, Charlie, thanks." He turned back to Leo. "Well, Leo, it was a pleasure. Stay out of trouble and keep believing in yourself, all right?" He extended a hand. Leo hesitated for a fraction of a second and reached out and shook it. Elvis's grip was firm, warm, and surprisingly gentle. Leo felt the calluses on his palm, the rough skin of a man who worked hard, who played a guitar every night. It was a simple handshake, but it felt monumental. "You too, Elvis," Leo replied, the casualness of calling him by his first name, feeling like a natural extension of their conversation. Elvis gave a final friendly nod, then turned and walked towards the waiting aide, disappearing through the door. Leo stood there for a moment, rooted to the spot, holding the photo and the pic tightly. The warmth of Elvis's hand still lingered on his. He was alone in the quiet lounge. The magic wasn't gone. It was no longer the electric energy of the concert, but a profound personal afterglow. He looked at the photograph again, his fingers tracing Elvis's bold signature. Closed his hand around the guitar pick, feeling its smooth, hard surface. He realized what an extraordinary gift this truly was. Not just the physical mementos, but the gift of Elvis's time, his genuine interest, his kindness. It wasn't about fame or celebrity, it was about human connection. About a legend taking a moment to see and acknowledge a simple fan. This night, born from a humble ticket and a daring act of curiosity, had blossomed into something truly unforgettable. A moment later, the aide Charlie reappeared at the lounge door. "All right, Leo," he said, his voice professional but not unkind. "Time to head out. I'll show you to the nearest exit." Leo nodded, still feeling a bit dazed. He carefully tucked the signed photograph into the inside pocket of his denim shirt, pressing it flat against his chest. The guitar pick he held tightly in his palm. He walked out of the lounge, the plush carpet giving way to the harder floors of the back corridors. The bustling energy of the crew had subsided slightly. Some were still packing up, but the frantic pace had slowed. Leo walked with a new sense of purpose, his head a little higher. He wasn't just a kid who had snuck into a restricted area. He was a kid who had been invited. Charlie led him down a different set of stairs, past a catering area where tables were being cleared, and eventually to a side exit away from the main crush of the crowd. The night air, still humid, felt different now. It carried the faint scent of city exhaust and a distant murmur of traffic. "There you go, kid," Charlie said, opening the heavy metal door. "Good luck." "Thank you," Leo said, turning to him. "Thank you for everything." Charlie simply nodded, then closed the door, leaving Leo standing on a quieter street behind the grand arena. The roar of the city traffic was a dull hum compared to the thunderous applause he had just experienced. People were still milling about, waiting for taxis or walking to their cars, but he felt disconnected from them, as if he had just stepped out of a dream. He started walking, his feet moving automatically. His mind, however, was still back in that small lounge, talking to Elvis. He replayed every word, every gesture. The way Elvis had listened, really listened, when he talked about his dad and his mom. The genuine concern in his eyes when Leo described his nosebleed seat, comfortable way he had chatted like they were old friends. He reached up and touched the pocket where the photograph lay. He pulled it out just to confirm it was real. In the dim glow of a street lamp, Elvis's signed face looked back at him. The bold, "To Leo, keep on rockin'." A personal message, he smiled, a wide, unstoppable grin. He thought about his initial disappointment, arriving at the arena, seeing how far his seat was. He thought about the risk he took wandering backstage and the fear when the guard caught him. And then the unbelievable moment when Elvis had pointed at him. It wasn't just a famous person meeting a fan, it was a truly human interaction. Elvis hadn't been aloof or rushed. He had been kind, curious, and genuinely interested. He had understood Leo's passion, his struggle. He had seen past the bad seat and the attempted closer look and recognized a kindred spirit, someone who loved the music with a pure heart. As he walked, the streetlights cast long shadows, and the city felt both familiar and strangely new. He was the same Leo from the same small apartment with the same responsibilities, but something fundamental had shifted inside him. He carried not just a photograph and a guitar pick, but a memory, a feeling of being seen and valued by someone truly extraordinary. He thought about what Elvis had said, "Family's important," and "keep believing in yourself." Simple words, but coming from Elvis, they felt like a powerful affirmation. He felt a newfound determination, a quiet strength. If Elvis the King could care so much about a kid from the cheap seats, then anything was possible. When he finally reached his street, the familiar apartment building loomed a comforting sight. He climbed the stairs quietly. Not wanting to wake his mom or sisters, he slipped into his room, gently closing the door. He sat on his bed, the springs creaking softly. He pulled out the photo and the pic again, looking at them under the faint glow of the moon through his window. It was real, all of it, and it was just for him. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. The signed photograph of Elvis, with its personal message, found a place of honor on Leo's small desk next to his bed. The guitar pick, worn smooth by his thumb, became a constant companion, usually tucked into his wallet or sometimes resting beside the photo. They were not just souvenirs, they were tangible links to an extraordinary night, a secret treasure that no one else in his world quite understood. Leo never told anyone the full story, not even his best friend Mark. He tried once, a brief, excited burst of, "You won't believe who I met." But the incredulity in Mark's eyes, the skeptical look that said, "Yeah, right," made him stop. How could he explain something so unbelievable, so personal to someone who hadn't been there? It felt too precious to expose to doubt. So he kept it to himself, a warm, glowing ember in his heart. The memory of that night, and especially the conversation with Elvis, became a quiet wellspring of strength for Leo. When he faced a tough day at school, or felt overwhelmed by the endless bills and the pressure to help his family, he would often close his eyes and remember Elvis's kind eyes. His warm smile, he'd hear his voice saying, "Keep believing in yourself." Or, "Family's important." Those words spoken by the king resonated deeply, guiding him. He finished high school working harder than ever, often staying up late to study after his jobs. He eventually earned a small scholarship to a local community college, something he wasn't sure he could ever achieve. He remembered Elvis talking about his humble beginnings, and it fueled Leo's determination. If Elvis could rise from nothing, then Leo could at least make his own way. He pursued a career in accounting, a far cry from the glittering world of music, but it allowed him to help his family financially, to lift some of the burden from his mother. He made sure his sisters had opportunities he hadn't had. He carried the lessons of that night with him: humility, kindness, and the importance of genuine connection. Even as Elvis's career evolved, as he became an even greater legend, Leo's appreciation only deepened. He bought every new record, watched every movie, But for Leo, Elvis was more than the iconic figure seen by millions. He was the man who had looked a kid in the eye, seen his passion and extended a hand of friendship. He was a human being who had recognized the struggle, the dream, and offered a simple, powerful message of encouragement. Years later, when Leo was an adult with a steady job and a comfortable life, he still cherished the photograph and the pic. They were reminders that magic could appear in the most unexpected places, that even a bad seat could lead to an extraordinary encounter. One quiet evening, as he sat in his own living room listening to an old Elvis record, the familiar voice filling the room, he picked up the signed photo. He ran his thumb over the faint indentation of Elvis's signature, remembering the warmth of his handshake, the genuine interest in his eyes. Thought about all the people who had been at that concert, tens of thousands of them, and he, Leo, the boy from the cheap seats, had been chosen, not because he was special or famous or wealthy, but because, in a brief moment of connection, Elvis had seen something in him. He had seen a fellow human being who simply loved the music. That night hadn't just been about meeting Elvis Presley. It had been about experiencing a rare act of compassion, a moment of profound human connection that transcended fame and status. It taught Leo that true greatness wasn't just about talent, but about kindness, about reaching out, about making someone else feel seen. And every time he looked at that photo or felt the smooth guitar pick in his pocket, Leo knew with absolute certainty that even from the cheapest seat, he had been given the greatest gift of all. It was a memory that truly did keep on, rockin' forever, inspiring him, forever warming his heart.